Hey, Ted Morrissey here. Let's talk about the 5 paragraph essay, shall we? You know the one I'm talking about. We've learned it in school, probably starting maybe in junior high or middle school, someplace like that. You've got your 5 paragraphs. You've got your introduction, which includes your thesis and your sort of preview or summary or list of 3 subtopics. Then you have 3 body paragraphs. The first body paragraph deals with the first subtopic, the second body paragraph deals with the second subtopic, and the third body paragraph deals with the third subtopic. And then you have a conclusion, which you kind of restate the thesis and those 3 subtopics again, and then hopefully draw some kind of actual conclusion. Right? Again, we start learning that pretty early, and we keep using it again and again and again in school. Every time we write a paper in high school, no matter what subject it's for, no matter what the topic is, we default to the 5 paragraph essay. It's very handy, right? It's a good way to teach people sort of the basic logic of exposition, of an expository essay, right? You should, make clear to your reader what your main point is, your thesis statement. You should give your reader some sense of what you're going to talk about in your paper to expand on that, elaborate on that, validate your thesis statement, however you want to say it. And you should have, different body paragraphs that deal with different aspects of your thesis statement and provide examples and explanations and so on. And you should have some sort of conclusion, some sort of concluding part of your essay that perhaps kind of reminds the reader of your main point, but frankly, probably they remember. It hasn't been that long since they read your paper, right, by the time they get to the conclusion. So hopefully it kind of gives an actual conclusion, right? It kind of expands on the topic somehow or another. So the basics are all there in the 5 paragraph essay. And so teaching it to younger writers makes perfect sense. It hopefully kind of teaches them, the connection between the introduction and the body paragraphs and the conclusion, how all that kind of works in harmony together and so forth. But the problem is not every topic in the world fits nicely, fits effectively in the 5 paragraph essay format. Not every topic in the world can be boiled down to 3 subtopics, right? Some topics require way more than that. Maybe some topics don't require 3. Maybe you can do it in 2 body paragraphs just as effectively or more effectively, right? So a lot of times we have writers, student writers, who every time they see a writing prompt or are asked to come up with a topic for an essay, their brain just automatically goes down that track. They immediately start to carve it up into 3 subtopics. They can visualize the whole essay, right, with 3 body paragraphs plus an introduction and conclusion, and they just go right into it. But again, it's not a particularly effective way to write about, who knows, 99.999% of topics that you may be inclined to write about. So one of the things that we should be doing as we go through our college careers particularly is getting out of the habit of trying to reduce every topic to the 5 paragraph format, right? Again, the basic idea is sound, of having, some sort of sense of what the paper is about in the beginning, and having body paragraphs that expand on that, explain that, illustrate that, and then having some sort of concluding section where you sort of help the reader to understand where to go from here with the topic, right? Given what they know now. But expressly, the 5 paragraph with 3 subtopics and 3 body paragraphs, that is something we want to try to get beyond, right? To think in more sophisticated ways, more complex ways than that structure. Now, unfortunately, there's no formula that I can give you. I think that's one of the attractive aspects of the 5 paragraph theme. It has a sort of mathematical formula to it that English teachers, writing teachers, composition teachers can give to their students, similarly to the way that the math teacher can teach them how to find the area of a triangle, or to solve for x, or whatever. I'm not a math teacher and I spent a long time, so I took a math class, so I'm kind of having a hard time remembering all those different formulas. But the point is that in the sciences, whether it's math or whether chemistry or physics or whatever it might be, there are in fact formulas that students can be taught that they then can apply to every single example, every time they need to find the area, every time they need to determine the velocity of something, etc. They can apply this formula that they learned way back in high school, and it still works, right? So English teachers have come up with this formula for writing an essay with an introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and conclusion, which does work fairly well, for essays that students have to write. But ultimately, it's not, in fact, a formula that will work for everything, right? So, when someone becomes, let's say, a forensic accountant for like the FBI or some corporation or something, they have to learn approaches where they can take really complex sets of numbers that corporations generate and be able to audit them, figure out if they're accurate, predict how certain trends are going to go in the future based on certain numbers. They can't just take a simple formula that they learned in algebra class in 7th grade or something and do this forensic accounting that they need to do their job for whatever law enforcement agency or corporation or bank or whatever they're working for, right? They have to become more sophisticated as an accountant as they move along in their education in order to be able to do that kind of thing. Similarly, as writers of essays, we have to become more sophisticated kind of moving forward so that we can figure out more sophisticated ways of dealing with more sophisticated topics. And that means abandoning the tried and true, well-worn, very comfortable 5-paragraph theme, right? So, yeah, I mean, I've also used other kinds of metaphors in my written notes. I talk about how there are some recipes that only have 3 ingredients, like 3 subtopics. And I talk about the grilled cheese sandwich, which has bread and cheese and butter, or I talk about the peanut butter and jelly, which has peanut butter and jelly and bread and so on. So we can think of lots of pretty tasty meals that we can make with just 3 ingredients. But if we want to start, creating more elaborate kinds of soups and stews and souffles and whatever, we're going to have to abandon the 3 ingredient approach, right? We're going to have a lot more ingredients. We're going to have a lot more steps in the process. We're going to have to learn some more sophisticated techniques in terms of how we prepare food and deal with food. And so we have to bring all that together then to make the soup or the souffle or, heaven forbid, the casserole, whatever it might be that we are trying to make. And consequently, or similarly, I should say, as we try to write about more sophisticated ideas, do more sophisticated literary analysis, for example, we're going to have to bring more game to that process than just 3 subtopics. Multiple subtopics, multiple body paragraphs, multiple kinds of things you're doing within those paragraphs, whether it's different kinds of analyses, compare and contrast, or climactic order kinds of things, or whatever it might be. We have to really up our game as we go through and become more sophisticated kinds of writers. Okay. Now, my last thing, I'm going to really blow your mind, or some of you, I'm going to really blow your mind. We're so used to the introduction being 1 paragraph and the conclusion being 1 paragraph. As we get into more sophisticated topics and are writing longer and longer papers, maybe the sort of thing you might do more so in graduate school, for example, or when you get out on your own and you're writing, maybe you become a scholar of some sort and you're writing for publication, you're going to discover that not every not every essay has a one paragraph introductory structure. If it's a longer paper, it might have several paragraphs at the beginning introducing, contextualizing the process before you ever get to your thesis statement. So the thesis statement may come in paragraph 4 or 6 or 8. It may not come in the first paragraph. It may not even be a stated thesis statement, and it may be an implied thesis statement. In other words, you may never actually write your thesis statement, but the reader reading your piece can understand what it is you're putting forward. You imply what your main point is without even saying it. That's a possibility. Similarly, the conclusion isn't necessarily a single paragraph which restates what you've already said. Again, unless somebody is suffering from some serious memory loss, they probably don't need that reminder in the conclusion. They probably remember what your thesis statement was and what sort of main points you were making, your subtopics, to try to illustrate that. So it's actually kind of an insult to the reader's intelligence if you express too deliberately, too concretely, too precisely what you just told them, right? They know what you just told them. You just told them, right? So what the conclusion ought to do is offer a variety of things that the reader could do after reading your essay. So it might be suggesting another related topic they may want to pursue. It may just be posing some questions that they may want to consider kind of going forward. Oftentimes, talking about scholarly essays, an essay is intended as building on other scholars' work, other research, and so forth. And so at the end of your essay, you might lay down some ideas for the next person, the next scholar, the next researcher, where they may want to take your research, right? What would be some logical extensions of your work? So that may be the conclusion. And again, it may not be a single paragraph. It could be several paragraphs at the end of your longer kind of essay, right? So there's a lot to essay writing that the 5-paragraph structure just doesn't speak to. So I'm not necessarily expecting, as say juniors and seniors in college, that you're ready just yet for those really long, really elaborate kinds of essays. But I do think that you're ready to say goodbye to the 5-paragraph structure and to try to write essays which are structured appropriately for the sophistication of the topic that you are pursuing. Now, how many subtopics that might mean, how many body paragraphs, how long of an introduction, how long of a conclusion. Unfortunately, there's no good formula for that. It's just a matter of instinct and practice to get good at it, to get effective at it. But we need to start moving in that direction.